going to wait a few minutes here. I think it's about 1 or 2 till 3 o'clock. We'll get back in about 2 to 3 minutes. Let others join the call. So looking forward to talking with you. Hello, everyone. This is Jeremy Marks. We're going to go ahead and get started. Happy New Year. Again, Jeremy Marks. I'm the Director of Federal Programs and the lead on the EdSteps project. On the call today from the Ohio Department of Education is Chun Canberra, who's the EdSteps Program Administrator, Troy Berry, who's the EdSteps Project Manager, Diane Neal, who's an Assistant Director in the Office of Federal Programs and also the Chair of the One Plan Subcommittee, and Andrea Faulkner, who's the Assistant Director in the Office of Improvement and Innovation and who's the Chair of the One Needs Assessment Subcommittee. So we all want to welcome you to the EdSteps kickoff. We're very excited about this project. Thank you for being a part of an effort to create efficiencies. We had a very diverse group of districts that applied to be considered for the pilot. We had over 130 districts. You were one of 40. Again, thank you for being a part of this. A few bits of housekeeping before we move on. This webinar is slated for 2 hours, but it's likely not going to last that long, but we'll be around as long as there are questions. Your phones are muted, and we ask that you type your question into the chat feature, I believe, if you have questions, and then we will certainly be able to, I believe, open up the phones after the presentation. And we can also address the questions as they come in after the presentation. This is being recorded, so if you do ask a question, just know that it's being recorded. And if we do not have the answers, we will certainly get back and we will add it to our questions and answers list. So this slide sets the stage for the presentation. We have 3 general sessions that are slated for 30 minutes each. Again, it won't likely take that long. First is an overview of the EdSteps project in general and a summary of the EdSteps pilot program, which you're all part of. We will also then switch over to discussion and review of the One Needs Assessment, then the One Plan. We'll talk a little bit about next steps and important dates and discussions, and then We should have plenty of time for any questions that you have. So I am up first. Again, Jeremy Marks. This slide is our logo. As you can see, it's the building blocks. And again, on this particular part, I will be giving a high-level overview. The overview will consist of discussing the EdSteps project. What exactly is EdSteps? We'll give some updates that recently occurred. We'll talk about the pilot, and then we'll talk about tentative plans for the future. We have dedicated a website to EdSteps. If you type in EdSteps in the search engine, when you come to the department's website, you'll be directed there. Also, this PowerPoint will be available, and if you click on that here link, it will also take you there. Each of the website webpage will have subpages for each of the components that we'll discuss later in this presentation, and it will also have questions and answers. We will have this really will be the hub for all of our communication on EdSteps in general. We'll have email correspondence, and each one of these subfolders eventually will have EdSteps dot one needs assessment at education. It will be, the actual component will be a subfolder under those tabs. So we will be able to address all questions and information that comes in. Now, this is important to know that our communication with the pilot will be targeted, and we will talk a little bit more about how we'll be communicating with the pilot districts. But this part of the presentation is an overview of EdSteps in general. So, what are the goals of EdSteps? There are many goals, but as most of you, I'm assuming, know, EdSteps project, this concept did not happen overnight. It was developed long before even the reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act back in December 2015, and it started really from all of you, all the feedback that we received from our customers, our stakeholders over the last 5+ years, and it aligns very well with our strategic plan, Each Child, Our Future. Generally, our goals are to create cross-agency teams to support the unique needs of all of you, all of your districts throughout the cycle per se of planning, and everything from the helping to identify needs to through a compliance process. We want to create these cross-office teams, support teams, cross programs, so we can help address your needs and answer your questions. We also want to remove and identify and then remove any duplications and inefficiencies within the process and the systems. We want to shift the focus that we've had more to the quality of our plans, and through that, standardizing timelines and streamlining the process to ultimately allow for quicker access to funds. We really want to shift the narrative and create a culture of funding the plan, not planning to fund, such as creating a 3-year planning cycle that will have annual funding applications aligned to those 3 years. And eventually, through the EdSteps development systems process, we hope to streamline and create an application, funding application that will only require the most basic of information. Lastly, one of our main goals is to design, develop, and roll out the technology systems that are based on your needs and all users' needs and your feedback. The IT systems enhancements will support the business model rather than a business model adapting to the IT systems. So there are two main parts, I guess, of EdSteps. It is a transformation model. And what I hear a lot of times is when I talk with individuals about EdSteps, I hear that, oh, EdSteps is about replacing the CCIP. That is part of it, but EdSteps is a process. It's not totally about replacing our technology system. That will be a byproduct of meeting our business needs. It's a transformation model to improve basically the way we communicate, how we coordinate and collaborate to support our districts. It is about efficiencies and effective use of available resources. It's about creating more time to give back to you, your business of educating students. And then secondarily, it's about creating the business model or creating the technology enhancements that will support the business model. Now, in the next few slides, we'll go over the components of that, but we're going to start with creating 5 interchangeable components that are found in the CCIP that will ultimately shift us to helping with our critical needs of moving to 3-year plans and annual funding applications. So this slide talks about our business process. I'm not going to go over, I mentioned a little bit about this in the future slides, but you'll see there it's about, there's 2 sections, 2 parts of EdSteps. It's really a process. So this slide talks about what this process is. It's, from a department, the Ohio Department of Education, the state side, we really are focusing on the collaboration, the coordination, and communication, and improvements on all that. And we hope that by our actions and what we do, it can be emulated at the district level, where we can break down programmatic silos and work together to make sure that we have quality plans with funding applications that are applicable to those plans. Before we get into the technology side, I think it's important to identify the problem that we're trying to solve. On this slide, you can see that our current e-planning system, which is known as the CCIP, which I know you all work on, it is a great system. It was, and that really should be clear. A lot of people, including yourselves on this call, have been working diligently in a system that has been in model for a number of years across the nation. Several states use the technology and the software that drives the CCIP. But like everything else, we need to improve. And the CCIP was built in a different era, at a different time, and when the functionality and what we're trying to accomplish from a business side was different. It was also built during an era of No Child Left Behind that was more prescriptive in nature. We were a pioneer with the CCIP, and we want to again be a pioneer and be a model with EdSteps. The current CCIP, there are concerns about the functionality, the interface, and the usability. It's outdated. This is through information that we've gathered over the number of years from all of you. We have multiple needs assessments, including the needs assessments that's in the CCIP, decision framework, and other needs assessment tools. we believe that there should be one and only one needs assessment for you and for the state. Again, there are many different types of plans that need to be submitted, and we believe that we should move to one high-quality plan that serves all needs. The CCIP planning tool is limited and it's narrative-based, and there's no reporting mechanism, and it's really one size fits all. So the new e-planning system, we really are going off some, just a few guiding principles, and how that the technology can meet our business, and what the technology solution can be to meet our business needs. So the department's goals is that our customers want to use the EdStep system, not that you're required to because of EdSteps or because of some compliance issue. The best way to do this and make sure that our customers want to use our systems is to involve them in the process and throughout the process, from the designing component to the development component. And you all, as pilot districts, will be instrumental in that work. We've all heard stories about the real plans of a district are in the CCIP for compliance purposes only, but the plans that you use for student improvement and running your districts and schools is actually somewhere else. Well, that doesn't do anybody any good. Our view is that compliance is important and will always be critical, but we are shifting to supports. And when No Child Left came out, of course, the CCIP was designed to meet those compliance needs, and it really helped create a area where we really focused on one size to meet those compliance needs and didn't have a lot of flexibility. So our guiding principles are going to be that this isn't going to be one size fits all. It will be adaptable to change. It will be intuitive. It will be user-friendly, and it will hopefully really drive collaboration at all levels, from the state to the districts to the schools. So the EdSteps components that you'll be working with us on are the one needs assessment. You're going to hear from Andrea in just a few minutes. The prototype, as we were calling it, or first version of the one needs assessment, will be unveiled very shortly. I believe, if I'm okay, I'll say this. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but Monday, this coming Monday, January 13th, we will unveil the one needs assessment. The next component that we'll be focusing on is the one plan, consolidated funding formula application, and consolidated competitive application, and we want to have a very user-friendly, intuitive dashboard, guidance library, and communication hub where all of this can be communicated. We can get into some of the specifics more, but these are the 5 main components. Over time, we hope that EdSteps can expand to incorporate other current systems that we have, including potentially compliance and others, but we're starting with the major functionality of the CCIP. So now I'm going to transition to the EdSteps pilot. I think it's really important to first talk that there are 2 main parts of the pilot. You are, as pilot districts, critical to that. But the pilot is opened up to everyone in some way, shape, or form. So the first, as you see on this slide, is the one needs assessment. I guess I didn't steal anybody's thunder. It was right here on the slide that is opening January 13th on Monday, and all districts to use the one needs assessment tool. that will give us the feedback and help make enhancements when we ultimately have a vendor come on board to help us develop the other components that we'll mention later. Pilot districts, though, are required to use that one needs assessment tool that will be opening on January 13th. And pilot districts will also need to identify their needs over a 3-year period to help us transition to the 3-year planning cycle. Number 2 there, as you see, your 40 districts, very wide variety of districts. We will be posting that information. I'll talk about this later at the wrap up of the presentation, but we want to hear from all of you how best to communicate with you. We've asked for 2 staff from the district to be the points of contact, but we're pondering some other ways that may be helpful for you to get communication. And you will be starting to work on that one needs assessment, but also 3-year planning. Need to submit those plans by April 1st. So similar to the overall goals of the Ed Steps, we have overall goals and objectives of the pilot. So certainly don't want to read this, and you can see this. You will have access to this PowerPoint. But we certainly want to, again, work on collaboration and efficiencies at the department and also with you. And this is a learning exercise. How can we work together in partnership to make this occur? From a department standpoint, we are going to break down silos, and we're going to have cross-agency teams to communicate as much as possible in one voice. We want you to have access to those teams that can help you with your planning needs, from identifying and giving you suggestions. And we want the program offices across this agency to understand what's being communicated to you to help inform and better serve you when you have additional needs and additional questions. We want to receive your feedback, of course, on all the parts of this, not just the development of the systems, but this process that we're trying to undertake. It's a heavy lift on our part as well, as we need to shift timelines and practices and break down processes that have occurred for a long time, and all in the name of efficiencies and support for you and for us to do a better job. And then we ask that, and we are planning to roll out the technology systems for all parties to have access and be operational at the beginning of the school year of 2021-2022 or 2022-2023. So this slide talks about the commitments. You signed a partnership agreement, and as I mentioned, this is all about learning. It is a partnership, a true partnership. We want to be partners in your success, and we need you to help us so we can help all districts across the state. And we are very pleased and proud and thankful that you have committed to this project and the success of this project. So we are asking for the following expectations. As you can see from this slide, there was a partnership agreement. We're asking that the districts commit again to using the One Needs Assessment tool, and in using that tool this year to identify the needs over a 3-year period. We're asking the districts in the pilot to commit to developing 3-year plans that would start now, and those are for plans that are for 3 years, with school years starting 2021 all the way through 2022 and 23. So, and we would ask that you submit those by April 1st, as well as providing a funding application that's funding 1 year of your plan, but is aligned to your 3-year plan. That would be submitted by the end of June. We are asking districts to agree to receive support and feedback on your development and identification of your needs from not only the department, but in certain circumstances, the state support teams. And we are asking that you commit to being part of our EdSteps advisory team and give us feedback when we begin the development of our systems. An important note is after the pilot is concluded, the pilot group will join what we're considering cohorts. Every other district will be assigned to a cohort for 3-year planning. We plan to announce those cohorts for every district later, most likely in February, but there will be 3 cohorts for 3-year planning. And so once the pilot's over, we will transition into the 3-year planning cohorts. Cohort 1 will begin its planning this time, January 2021, so next year this time, for 3-year plans that will begin the following July. The pilot group, after you're done this summer, you will join cohort 3, the last cohort. So we will learn from you, and then we will have cohort 1 and then cohort 2 go, and then the pilot team will join cohort 3 to begin their next 3-year planning cycle starting January 2023. So as I'm starting to conclude my slides here, the question is, how will the pilot help align with the EdSteps project and timeline? So how is this going to align? And I'm not going to read all the particulars here. You can see this, but clearly we're trying to learn from the pilot this spring. This spring we're also, as I mentioned, are going to implement a 3-year review. So we'll learn from you as we at the department develop our 3-year plan review process and feedback process to help you build high quality plans. And then in the June and July, we will be reviewing annual funding applications that are aligned to that, just like what you would typically do, and submit your funding application at the end of June. Over time, we're hoping that our streamlined funding application that's only requiring the basic information against your 3-year plans will be approved much quicker. And then, as I mentioned, we will be assigning other districts to cohorts. So we've received a lot of questions about the timeline for this year. Clearly, you as a pilot, you have a number of responsibilities and commitments that we identified. And, as you work with other districts, they may ask, what does that mean for us for this school year? Basically, in a nutshell, it's business as usual, but provide us information. If you use our for the other districts that are not in the pilot, provide information if you're using the One Needs assessment tool. But you can see for this timeline, and again, I'm not going to go over there, but you can see, the 40 pilots. It's the first row there. The requirements, the R is a requirement for each one of those. And then if you go down to the non-pilots, down the rows below that, you'll see most of them are either required or it's a choice or it's optional. This slide talks about our tentative development timeline for the systems, the technology systems. If we receive proper funding, the system components, we want to begin designing, developing, and rolling those systems out in a 2-year phase. Our plan is to begin and hopefully have a vendor to come in, as you can see from this chart, July 1. And if you go kind of left to right there, from one needs assessment all the way to the dashboard, and then down from the design to the feedback, you could see that it's phased in and it's staggered, where one system is being developed, the other is being designed, and so forth, and a full rollout. So a lot of time and thought has been gone into this. You all as pilot districts will be instrumental in each one of these components. So that concludes my segment, the overall picture of EdSteps and some commitments that we want for the pilot districts. Again, thank you. I will conclude the presentation later and give some closing remarks, but I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Faulkner, who is the Assistant Director of the Office of Improvement and Innovation.
Thank you, Jeremy. So let's get started talking about our One Needs Assessment. Within the EdSteps, Jeremy mentioned the 5 components. The needs assessment is really the part of the process that's going to drive the rest of the system. So based on needs, you should be building a plan. Based on needs, you should be applying for grants. Based on needs, we should be monitoring your plan for implementation. So when we really look at where we start with the concept of EdSteps, it really is about doing a really high quality, comprehensive needs assessment so that you are able to then build a high quality plan. So when we start thinking about where we've come and how we've gotten here, one of the pieces to start thinking about is many of you use the decision framework. With the decision framework, it was a data-driven system, but the data that really drove the decision framework was the state report card. And because of that, sometimes needs were not always covered. We look at the current decision framework, it also focused on a few high impact items. And in reality, what most districts did was you identified those biggest ticket items that you were going to focus on during the year, and you identified those in the first section of the decision framework. And then you started digging deeper into those pieces. So it really did have a focus on high impact, because if you didn't focus on a few high impact items, as some of you know, you ended up with a 233-page needs assessment because the way the system generated that work. Our current decision framework also ultimately sends a plan to the CCIP so that we have the needs assessment coming over to the CCIP. When we look at the One Needs Assessment, it's still data-driven, but what we've done is we've expanded it beyond the data that is required of the state report card. So you're able to bring in a lot more data, and the tool actually helps you think about some of those data points that you might want to be looking at. It also is a comprehensive needs assessment. So we really did try to go beyond just the report card and reading and math and graduation, students with disabilities, and really look at all of those pieces of work that you're doing that has an impact on your students and their achievement. We're still focusing on a few high impact items, just like with the decision framework. However, we do want you to start identifying all of your needs, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, and then make a decision about which of those items would be the most high impact. And then ultimately, we do have a plan this year that will be going to the CCIP that helps you create a plan so that you have a 3-year plan as part of the pilot. When we look at the structure of the needs assessment, what you're going to see is sections within the new needs assessment. There's 8 of them, and currently on your screen you see 4 of them. What you will notice, and just off this first slide, you can see fiscal management is listed. This is not something that we've looked at before in the decision framework. So we really are trying to integrate all offices and all work that you do as a school and district. These are our last four sections. So there's a total of 8 of them. What we've tried to do is really make sure that we've covered all of our components. One of the good parts about the pilot is that if we did forget something, part of your feedback will be to help us understand what we've left off and who we might have not included and what pieces we need to include. So when Jeremy mentioned earlier that your feedback is a requirement, we really do want your feedback to make this an even better tool than what we currently have. So the next slide actually talks about the sections. So when we looked at the sections, we wanted to make sure that we broke them down into manageable parts. And we also wanted to make sure that we grouped them in logical sequence. So what we looked at, so here, example, you'll see college and career readiness here. In college and career readiness, we have 4 groupings: career connections, early warning systems, graduation, and post-secondary. So each section has a grouping so that you're able to digest it in small chunks, or do a whole section all at once. That would be up to you. Let's take a few screenshots of what we've got on our new needs assessment. We're not done yet. This is, as Jeremy mentioned, this is the first draft. This is a prototype for what we're doing. So some pieces haven't been completed yet. One of those is being able to actually view some of your data right in the system. So we're working on that, and then our team that we bring in this year will help with that as well. But what you'll see is on the left-hand side, it's a one needs assessment. This page should look really familiar to you if you've worked in the support tool at all, or maybe you had to do some compliance work, because some of these images look a lot alike. So we're hoping that that will make an easy transition for you as you're moving into the work. So the easiest part is to start the survey. To start the survey, once you log in and you have pulled up your district or your school, all you do is click Start Survey. It's right there. So there is actually an entire user manual that's been created to help you navigate through the new needs assessment. What we want to do on this presentation today is really kind of talk about this tool should look very familiar to you. So many of the functions are similar to what you've seen in the past. However, we have some enhanced features. An example on your screen, you'll see that this is the Leadership, Administration, and Governance section, and that we're in the subsection of Leadership, Administration, and Governance, and that we have 5 questions. You'll see that they're required questions. There's also, not in this slide, but in another slide, you will see recommended questions. What we've done, and this is one of those pieces where we really tried to do a due diligence on this, is that within this, we took the angle of letting the data drive some of the decisions so that everyone's needs assessment looks the same because everybody has the same questions. However, what is required or recommended is based on your own data. So what we've tried to do is actually look at data for districts and schools and decide based on the data, program offices determine if a question was required. So for example, a graduation question is going to be required for a district or a school that is graduation rate at or below 67%. However, just because it's required for someone but not required for you, doesn't mean it's not an option for you to consider going in and working on that question. Because if graduation is a concern for you, then that is a set of questions that you would want to look at. At the end of each section, you will see a question, and it's hard to see on the slide, so I apologize for that. But come Monday, like Jeremy said, the system will be open and you'll be able to see this. There's a priority needs root cause question. So it's really looking at how do you dig deeper into why is this a concern? Why is our data where it's at? We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how would be the best way to do this. What we recognized was that many of you use multiple options when it comes to doing a root cause analysis. Fishbone, 5 whys. So what we did instead was we linked the root cause, the word root cause, to a document to help you identify what might be your best course of action for identifying root cause. But then you can use whichever root cause analysis you'd like to use. But what you would put in here is the root cause. How did you get here? When you enter your root cause question, you'll see the second screenshot that's on the screen. What this does is then gives you the opportunity to say, is this a priority need or not? Now, in the past, with the decision framework, you very reluctantly only picked a couple priority needs. We have a very big mind shift here. On here, you do want to identify everything that is a need. So if you're saying, you know what, we've got graduation concerns, we've got career connections concerns, you would mark all of those. The difference with the tool is what we're going to see later on. When we flip over and we look at the next slide, instead of generating by picking a priority need in the current decision framework, instead of it generating that you're going to answer all of these questions about that particular item through multiple steps, instead what it does is it pulls over the section, the grouping, and the root cause you typed in. So it's the basic information that you've provided. Then you get to select what areas are most impactful to this root cause. So let's talk about graduation some more because we've already been talking about it. Let's say when you're doing your root cause analysis, you realize that you're not giving students access to algebra at a lower grade level. And that means you're not having a lot of your students take high-level math classes. There's not an opportunity sometimes for students to repeat a course if they need to repeat a math course. So one of the pieces that you've really been looking at is that we have a structural problem that we require that you take advanced math in 7th grade to be able to take algebra in 8th grade, so that by the time you get to be a high school student, you may only have 2 or 3 kids in your highest advanced math courses. So you want to address your operations. We're going to change the way we do entrances into our advanced math classes. That in this section, you would then pick operations because that's one of the pieces that is inhibiting you to being able to offer these high-level math classes or having your students obtain these high-level math courses. Another piece in this section would be with graduation. Let's say that your teachers really need some high-quality professional development on implementation of some technology-based blended learning kind of work, and that your students would be more engaged, and that's why your students aren't engaged. So you're looking really at that root cause piece, and you're going to provide professional development to teachers. I could put that under professional development, and I'm going to put that under building capacity. Diane, however, could say, you know, that really for me is under curriculum instruction and assessment because that's what they're doing. That's okay. It is not about putting it under the right heading. What does ODE think is the right heading? It is about making a high quality thinking about what are you going to do to address the needs of your schools. So I'm going to go back just a little bit, and I want you to think about those questions. These root causes need to be, what is your root cause? What is your real root cause? What is your real answer to the questions? As you're working through this, one of the things you should be asking yourself is, how do we answer this question? Not, what does ODE want me to say? We really want you to really dig deep into here is the answer to our question. Here is how we got here. More than what does ODE want to hear. Because for this to be a high quality needs assessment and to build a high quality plan out of it, you really need to dig deep into what you're doing and critically think about over the next 3 years, what do we want to do differently to make sure that we have provided the best, I don't want to say interventions, but the best strategies to address our needs. So with that, with the completion of your needs assessment, we'll be transitioning into our one plan, which I'm going to turn it over to Diane Neal, our Assistant Director in the Office of Federal Programs.
Thank you, Andrea. Well, I'm excited about the changes that are coming, but let's talk about what do we mean by the one plan. We have one needs assessment, and really it goes along with what do we mean by one needs assessment. So the purpose of the one plan is for us to be able to create one centralized plan that encompasses all the plans that districts currently have to do into one comprehensive improvement plan. So the hope is that we would be able to help our districts align all their improvement efforts in the district, clarify the priorities for the district, condense their strategies that the district is working to implement, and attach the work for funding sources. Instead of doing an improvement plan for school improvement, an improvement plan for your third grade reading guarantee, another improvement plan for teacher equity, we would have one improvement plan, and each of those plans would be embedded within that one improvement plan. Many of you out there in the district who work on these plans already know that they have many common features and strategies that are required in them. So when the needs assessment or the one needs assessment will roll into the CCIP, it's going to look like this. It's going to show the section or the improvement area, core improvement area that you selected. And then underneath that, you're going to have what was your priority need or the subsection. And it's going to pull in also your root cause into your needs assessment, along with those other additional improvement areas that you've selected that you need to address in order to address the root cause that you've written and to finally address that priority need that you've identified. Once you get into the one plan, you're going to notice, or the planning tool, you're going to notice a little bit different on the first page. For one, it's going to say one plan cohort pilot. You're all going to see where you currently have, where it says copy over current plan or FY20 plan. What's going to happen is when you click on that this year, your plan will not be there. It'll go to the FY21 plan, and you're going to have the links for creating the plan from your needs assessment that you've just collected. So you'll have a link to create your SMART goal, links for your strategies, the links for your action steps will be there. And later on, when you get into the funding application, you'll also have your fiscal resource links that'll still be available. But none of your previous information will be there. Now, if you want to look back, you can always change the year and go back and look at your previous plans that you've had. There's also going to be, when we've talked about the 3-year plan, we're talking about the 3-year review process that's going to be changing, which is a lot different from what we've done in the past. You've written a plan, you've copied it over for multiple years. Federal Programs goes in and looks to make sure that you're meeting the requirements for all of your federal funds. And then they go and they look at your funding application and approve it. This time, though, it's going to be multiple offices across the Ohio Department of Ed that will be involved in the review of the plan. Each office will review the plan that's involved, and they will choose whether the plan meets the criteria, whether they have recommendations suggested for your plan, if the plan needs to address criteria from their office, or if it's not applicable. Right now and currently in the Ohio Department of Education, for this year's review process, we have the Office of Improvement and Innovation, our Office of Intensive Supports, the Office for Exceptional Children, the Office of School Sponsorship, Office of Educator Effectiveness, Office of Early Learning and School Readiness, the Office of Approaches to Teaching and Professional Learning, that's the Literacy Office for the third grade reading guarantee, and of course the Office of Federal Programs will be on this review sheet. Any of those offices, once they review your plan, they'll select one of those options in the drop down, and if they have any recommendations, or if they have a requirement that you need to address in your plan, they will add it to a history log. Now the history log will be on the planning tool side instead, and there's also going to be one on the funding application side. So you're going to have two history logs. Once the office reviews it and they've added their notes, the Office of Federal Programs, once they begin reviewing your applications, will look at the history log notes. If there are any required items that the other offices have requested the district to address in their plan, we will see if you were able to address that and then ask the office to go in and look again so that they can change the status for us. If it's a recommendation, it's just a recommendation for you and the district to think about as you continue to work forward with your plan over the next 3 years. We will not hold up any plans or applications because an office did not review the plan. The only time that we would hold a plan is if there's criteria that has been requested and we need to have it addressed in the plan before we can approve the funding application. All other plans would be approved accordingly. If you're familiar with the Quality Comprehensive Continuous Improvement Plan rubric that we created last year and we began to use, this rubric will also be used this year. It will be updated to include the one needs assessment piece, but also what other offices are looking for in the plan. So as you go through the rubric and you start working on your plan, you can think about, okay, so we have to have a reading plan. We know that that needs to be embedded somewhere in this. What does the Office of Literacy want to make sure that we have covered in this plan? So this will be available for your use once we have it up to date and on the site. Think about your one needs assessment. Think about how it was organized. Your priority needs roll over to your SMART goals. You have your improvement areas that will roll over to your strategies then for your plan. And underneath each of your improvement areas or strategies, you're going to add what are our action steps or implementations, which you can pull from your root causes. Finally now, when you get into the one plan, two other sections that you want to look at that are changed is down at the bottom underneath the plan function. If you want to see where you can find your one plan review status, there it is underneath your plan function. It'll be the first item. And the history log item for the planning tool side will be underneath there as well. In the history log, you'll be able to see your status from each of the different departments as they have gone through and looked at your plan. You'll also be able to see any notes that have been added from any of the offices involved. The history log also has the ability that when an office has submitted a status, that office can also email you that they have reviewed it and that any notes that they have would be in the plan. So your superintendent, your treasurer, and your funding application contacts or your CCIP planning and data entry we'll get an email about the status change from a certain office. There's also an additional area. Let's say you want to add a history log and say that we've changed the plan, or we met that criteria that the Office of Teacher Equity asked us to add. You can add an email address to the history log, and so once you post it, then it will go to that person. That's the end of the changes for the one plan and the process that you'll see. We'll have more information coming soon. So let's talk. Let's talk about the timeline for the one plan. You're going to start your needs assessments here in January. And we've asked that the needs assessments and the one plan are completed by March 30th. The different departments in the office will begin reviewing those plans then on April 1st. Since more than one office can review at one time, no other office is going to hold up the review of the plan by another office. We can have multiple offices in there reviewing, and many of your federal programs consultants will start reviewing your plan at that time as well, because they can go in now and at least show that they've reviewed your plan, and if there's any missing pieces for school-wide or district improvement, school improvement, they can address it then. Those will be reviewed and completed by June before we start reviewing the funding applications. And by then, you'll be able to go back in and address any issues that have come up with the plan. So that's the end of the presentation for the one plan. If you have any questions, we'll address those during the session. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jeremy.
Thanks, Diane. So before we open it up to questions, and we're going to have a lot more time for questions than originally anticipated on this presentation. So feel free to type any questions. We'll also, I believe, I'll look to Troy and June, whether whether you type in the questions or raise your hand and we can unmute the phone. But before we do that, I want to talk about next steps and some discussion topics. So I believe we have about 115, 120 individuals on this call. We very much thank you for dedicating 2 individuals from each office, each district to be part of this process. The concept of those individuals is that we can get information from you very quickly, and you can receive information very quickly. So we're trying to make sure the communication process is expedited. We will also be providing training materials. Diane and Andrea both mentioned on the one needs assessment and one plan, some communication that will be coming out. You'll be receiving a CCIP note very shortly that talks about the one needs assessment. It will also have links to resources and training materials. We will also be putting together across offices some training dates and times, and the SSTs can also be available for trainings, and we'll be sure to make those dates and times available upon request. We also, as I noted, one needs assessment is open January 13th. We plan to streamline the funding application, as I noted. Diane just got through her presentation, showed you the one plan that it's currently in the CCIP. That when we have a vendor come on board, our ultimate goal is to transition out of the planning process in the CCIP into a new system. This is going to be very helpful to learn how that process is done within the CCIP. So thank you very much for that. We are currently wanted to notify you that not all needs assessments and all planning requirements may be part of this one plan or one needs assessment at this time. This is a very fluid thing, as you heard a lot of information today. I'm very, very pleased with the department staff and Andrea and Diane and their leadership and all the teams across the agency to identify planning requirements and different needs assessments and coming together, but we may not have all of them right now. So keep in mind that these tools that you're seeing right now will be, and your feedback will be critical for us to make sure we're identifying every needs assessment tool and planning requirement to make this a success. So there could be some particular offices that may ask you still to provide some needs assessment information. Lastly, I believe, as I'm looking at this slide, a question could arise of if there would be a change in your accountability status during the time in which you are either in a cohort or in this case your pilot district. What would happen, because the concept here is that you identify 3 years of needs, and then you develop a one plan that is of high quality that will be served for a 3-year period and have streamlined funding annual applications that are submitted in June to support those plans. What happens if accountability status changes? Well, the answer to that, and again, we will be constantly updating our questions and answers document, would be that it would just require an update. Should the issue that drove you to a change in accountability status not be addressed in your current needs assessment or current plan. So it's not that you have to submit a new plan or do a whole new needs assessment. You need to review to see if that change has been addressed, and if not, to address it, and then notify us accordingly. So that I think that's an important point to bring up. So again, we welcome your input. We need your input. And I guess lastly, just remember this is a pilot. This is a learning experience. We're all learning together. We want to be flexible. If there's a way that we can assist you and support you, or if you have anything that you want us to consider, we will consider it. I can't promise you anything, but this is a pilot. There's going to be bumps in the road. We ask you to be patient, and again, we're very, very thankful for you to be a part of this. With that, I'm going to look to Chun and Troy to see if there's any questions. So why don't you highlight those for me, and I'll see what. So this one is. So we have a question here. Is it possible for a district contact person to receive a notification that a history log entry has been made?
So when the history log information is put into the system, it is set up with a drop-down box that those who are the treasurer, the superintendent, the CCIP, planning entry access, and the CCIP funding access, data entry funding will receive a history log note. If you do not have any of those roles right now currently in your district, it is recommended that you are provided one of those roles in your OED system at the district, so that you would receive those emails then, because it goes to all of those individuals, any individuals in your district who have one of those roles. So there's 4 different roles, and you would only need to have one of those that you would then receive the history log notes.
So thank you, and we're just going through the chat list to see what questions. I remember seeing a question earlier that was, oh, okay, you already addressed it. Okay, so next question is, must all reviews for the one plan meet the recommended or above to have funding available to create a PCR. So, first and foremost, I think it's important to remember what we're trying to accomplish here in terms of efficiencies and create robust, high-quality plans over a 3-year period. And so in those 3-year plans, and Diane mentioned this in her part, will be reviewed across multiple offices to provide support and technical assistance, so you have a high-quality plan that can serve for a 3-year period. However, of course, we encourage and would think that you would be modifying and making changes to your plans based on needs and other issues that come addressed. But from a required standpoint, you would not need to make modifications unless what we noted before. So but it's very important to remember we're shifting to a funding the plan, not planning to fund. So we will approve a 3-year plan, but you will be submitting 1-year funding applications against those plans. So when you submit a PCR, and I'll look to Diane if she wants to chime in, it will have to address and be allowable use of funds against the what is identified in your budget application.
That's correct. And if they have any items that are listed as required but not met, required criteria in the plan, we cannot approve the funding application unless that item the required piece has been addressed. So if there's a required item that the plan is missing, we'll simply ask that you go in and correct that so that we can approve your application.
So it's also, and I see another question related to PCRs that I'll address in a second, and I think it's really, and you've all heard this, I believe, but as Diane mentioned, when you submit your plans by late, the end of March, April 1st, during the course of April, May, in June, we will be at the department reviewing those across offices. At the same time, once we get the funding grants from the U.S. Department of Education and make estimated allocations, we will be, releasing the funding application for you to submit the funding application by the end of June. So that process, if you can see the benefit of this, will allow the department, because you've already had your plan approved, each June that you submit that, we are just simply approving, when I don't want to say simply, there's got to be thought into this as well, of course, from a budget application standpoint, but we will be approving the budget application that will be, should be expedited and should afford your districts in the department to get money out the door quicker so you have your full period of availability. The question there from, looks like Stephanie, is PCR process will still be completed the same way? The answer to that is yes. Our enhancements at this point, our changes are the 5 components. We've heard from the districts that, are generally our financial part of the CCIP serves the districts well. And however, keep in mind, right now we're in the pilot. When we have a vendor come on board and start the phase-in of the design, development, and rollout of these components over a 2-year period with all the input that you give us in testing, I think we would be missing an opportunity not to be also examining the connection to the financial side. And that may or may not warrant some changes. And those changes would solely be for the benefit of the districts. And so long-winded way of saying this is, yes, it stays the same, but I would strongly encourage all of us to see what improvements we can make in that linkage. Sure.
Okay, so I'll take the next question, which was, If a district identifies a new need after one needs assessment has been sent to the CCIP, can they go back and into the one needs assessment to complete a new section or make changes? Yes. Our IT staff here has worked so hard to make it so that a district or a school can pull back a needs assessment once it's been submitted, so that they can work on it
For 3 years.
for 3 years. So you'll be able to actually go back in over the course of the 3-year period, pull back your needs assessment, make modifications, make tweaks, make changes, and then be able to resubmit that in such a manner so that you can recognize we've had a change, we've made some progress, or something's happened, and you can go back in and do that. You would be able to do that. That also is the same case that, let's say you're working on it and you think you're done and you hit submit and then you realize we really weren't done. We haven't covered a couple things that we really need to cover. You don't have to call us and say, hey, please, can I please have it back? Nope, you go in, you put it back into progress. You guys have that ability to be able to move those back and forth for yourself.
So, and thank you again for that question, and Diane, your answer, or Andrea, your answer. There's going to be, the next question talks about the one plan. And when I was thinking of Andrea's answer to the previous question, I also think it's important that plans should be updated as you see fit. And similar to once we approve a 3-year plan across this agency, the intent, as Diane mentioned, to all the cross offices, if you make a change to a particular area in your 3-year plan, the appropriate office that will review that particular area of your plan and sign off. It won't require all the current steps that you all need, and I'll see, or not all need, I'll see from how our process works before. Ultimately, once, a plan is approved and the budget is approved, there shouldn't be a lot of those revisions in those processes that take so much time. So, Diane, did you want to try to answer the question there, or address the question about the one plan in the schools?
Yes, so if you currently are required to complete a plan at the school level, you would still be required to do a needs assessment and a plan at the school level as well. So currently, those schools that must do a plan would be those schools that are priority or focus and watch. Or if they're a Title I school-wide building, they must have a needs assessment and plan. So one of the things that you're going to want to think about at your district is how do we want to address this from a school level first that feeds up to the district's overall plan, or do we want the district to do the one needs assessment and their plan, and then schools work within that as they go through their needs assessment and their plan? So depending on the size of your district, that certainly will have a lot to do with how you address this. But if you're a smaller district and you only have a couple of buildings, sometimes it's helpful to see what they've identified as their root causes to help you make decisions at the district level for those areas that have come up within your needs assessment.
So I see that there's also a question about, FAQs. Of course, we will be updating our Ed Steps materials and documents and FAQs regularly. Keep an eye out on the Ed Steps website. But as I mentioned before, and I don't actually know if I actually covered this in the discussion topic, but we want to hear from you on what is the best way to communicate with you. There's some discussions about whether we can create a SharePoint site that you all pilot districts could have access to, because we want you all to collaborate and communicate and work together and learn from each other, just as we're learning from you. but I know not everybody has the same systems and technology. So we want to hear from you how best to do this, because we know not everything that we want to communicate with you do we want to put on the main website of EdSteps, right? So let us know. We will be doing targeted emails to the 2 people that you've identified for providing information. But again, there are other types of documents and information that we would much rather be able to share with you not through email. So go.
Oh, I want to jump right on because the One Needs assessment training materials have been updated to the website. So if you're excited about the release of the new One Needs assessment on Monday, and our IT guys give me a cringy look because I'm so excited about it, you have the ability to right now to go in, type in One Needs assessment, and on the EdSteps webpage, you will find the manual, the glossary of terms for the One Needs assessment. You'll also find the questions that are part of the One Needs assessment, along with the required triggers. So who's required to do which questions. And then also there's a link to the FAQs, because we have FAQs not only just for EdSteps, but for the One Needs assessment, and we'll continue to build those out, like Jeremy said. So when you log off here and you're super excited about looking at the new needs assessment, you can go on to the website and find it right there.
We see, Andre, you may want to be able to address there's a question about watch status districts. When those will be, we want to stick to the EdSteps topics, but if you can address that, go ahead.
I do not mind addressing that. I was actually doing that right before I came down here for this. We are working on getting those out this week. We do anticipate that District Watch very well may make it out as early as today, but for schools and districts, we know that it will be by the end of the week. So yes, the watch statuses will be coming out very, very soon.
If I can add, actually, when people log into the new system on Monday, the status will be there for every school districts and buildings.
So the next question is, do independent districts need to complete a One Needs assessment? So the answer is yes. So we are now moving to creating a One Needs assessment. Every district had to complete a needs assessment, but the issue was they had to complete it in different, maybe different formats and different venues. We are now creating one and only one needs assessment. So the pilot districts, including any districts that are independent that are a part of the pilot, will need to complete the One Needs assessment. All districts will need to start to complete, or will be transitioned to completing the One Needs assessment the next year. So pilot districts have to. This particular year, there are no changes per se to districts needing to do the One Needs assessment. Only the districts in the pilot need to do that. But all districts are encouraged, and all districts will be required to in a year. Next question there. Community schools have a lot of overlap within the district and school level plans. Will that be able to be eliminated using one plan and one needs assessment? The answer is yes. And keep in mind, as we, every school and every district is unique, though, and have their own unique challenges and opportunities that should be addressed individually by need and by accordingly in their plans. However, we understand that there's some overlap that occurs, and the concept is to be as efficient as possible, but with the caveat that this isn't just stamp one thing into another, because they're different and they're unique.
So also with the community schools, if previously one of the issues came up on the planning side where they had to have a plan for the district because of district improvement components, and then they had to have a school plan because of school improvement components. We were able to take those components and we embedded them into the One Needs assessment triggers. So you're really looking at those at the front of your planning process instead of at the end after you've already written your plan. Oh, did we address this and did we address that? So that will be one needs assessment and one plan for community schools, and it will be in the district planning tool area. You won't have to do an extra one for your school.
We see there's another question that we must have skipped about regarding roles, and the question is about clarifying if more than one person can have the same role. And the answer to that is yes, of course, other than superintendent and treasurer. But if you're talking about other roles in the system, the answer is yes. A new question came up, do all priority focus watch and Title I buildings need to have their one plans completed by March 30th? And the answer to that is yes. So, as part of the pilot district, we are requesting that those that are part of that have their plans completed by the end of the March. And we understand that's a very quick turnaround. As a pilot district, there will be some leeway as we work, but that is the expectation as we learn together. And then so there is a comment there. Are there other questions that we have? Do we have anybody on the phone or anything? Well, we got another one here, it looks like. If a district is not participating in the pilot but has a lot of priority and focus buildings, are they required to complete the one needs assessment this year?
I'll take it for you, Jeremy.
Sure.
Okay, so if a district is not part of the pilot, they are not required to complete the one needs assessment. However, they are still required to complete a needs assessment. So the idea of what was required if you had to do the DF last year, you have to do a one needs assessment or the needs assessment that's within the CCIP. So if a building is not participating in the pilot, they would need to be doing that. So for our pilot districts, don't think that somebody else isn't having to do the minimum requirements. Everybody is still having to do the minimum requirements that is expected of their status. It is just that our pilots have chosen to be part of the one needs assessment. As we will see, many of your district counterparts who were not lucky enough to be part of the pilot will still do the one needs assessment, but it is not a requirement for them.
Great, thank you. So we have no other questions. We will be around probably for the next 8 minutes or so to see if there are any questions that come in. But if not, thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. We will mute the phones, but be here till about 4:30. If we see any questions, we'll unmute them. But thank you again. Right here on this slide, you see contact information. You can contact us anytime, all of us. This is the EdSteps pilot team and EdSteps team in general. And we'll, if we don't have the answer to your question, we will certainly get one for you. So thank you very much. Hello, I see there's another question that came in about a listing of the pilot districts and schools. The answer to that is yes, we will have that available. We certainly can send that out via email to all the pilot districts, but I think it goes back to our thinking of how do we want to do this and communicate directly with our pilot districts. In the meantime, we will probably post that information on the website, but we can certainly make sure we send out the listing of pilot districts to those that are on the 2 contacts on the district list. Thank you.
So it was requested that we repeat what we said about community schools. Because in the past we've had different components for the building and for districts, and community schools are both, they've had to do 2 different components, 2 different pieces.
2 different plans.
2 different plans. The way we've done the change with this is that we've built it all into one. So a community school would not have to do both a building level plan and a district level plan. They will do one needs assessment and therefore one plan.
If an intensive district chooses to use the one needs assessment with a priority focus, watch building school-wide Title I also be required to complete the one needs assessment.
You're mad.
So when we're talking about districts that are not part of the pilot, we'll address that offline since this is for the pilot districts. For the pilots, please understand that you have to do the one needs assessment for all the buildings that you did the decision framework for last year, and you have to do the one needs assessment for any school-wide building as well. So if you have any questions about what is happening to the non-pilot, we can address that offline with you, and we'll just reach out to you directly. So we got another question about pilot districts attending SST trainings. So the SSTs, many of them are offering universal training, which will be an additional assistance to help a pilot district. If you are already identified as a intensive moderate DF, or you're a priority school and you guys are receiving comprehensive support from an SST, you will be getting additional support beyond any universal trainings that may happen. When it comes to additional materials for the pilot, as Chun and Jeremy mentioned earlier, we are working on additional regional pieces that will happen, or is there going to be additional webinars? But when it comes to if you're offered an SSC training, that may be very beneficial for you to attend if you're offered that opportunity.
Yeah, thanks, Andre. And also, I'll just add that, pilot districts, individuals can contact us directly anytime, of course, and we will provide, hands-on support, preferably by phone, but if we need to go out, we will discuss that. But look forward to more webinars like this. Look forward to some training opportunities that will be at various locations, either by the SST or the Federal Office of Federal Programs or in other locations. Clearly email us directly and we can provide that hand-on support. But I just wanted to add on to what Andrea said.
One needs an assessment.
Oh, in terms of on the question on the one needs assessment, the email is will be edsteps.oneneedsassessment@education.ohio.gov. If you just send it to education or edsteps@education.ohio.gov, it will get forwarded to the one needs assessment mailbox, but that's another opportunity. Thank you. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you so much. We're going to give a half hour back to you. We see the questions are kind of tampered down. So again, contact us if you have any questions. We thank you so much for being a part of the pilot, and thank you for participating today. Bye now.